Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Welcome to Lyme Time, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be welcoming my special guest, Meghan Bradshaw. She works for the Center for Lyme Action, and she is the Government Relations Manager. So the Center for Lyme Action is a 501c4 dedicated to growing federal funding for Lyme disease in an effort to find a cure, especially for Lyme patients with persistent, debilitating symptoms. Their values are bipartisan, inclusive, humane, and scientific. In 2019, a group comprised of the Bay Area Lyme Foundation and Project Lyme organizations came together to create a new organization to bring together patient advocates and members of Congress and their staff, resulting in the Kay-Hagan-Tick Act being signed into law. That was a very, very big deal. In December 2020, the president signed new appropriations that nearly doubled the federal funding for Lyme disease to $108 million. This episode will go into what CLA does, as well as how you can sign up for the annual Lyme disease virtual fly-in to be face-to-face with your own state representatives to ask for further funding. And it's not as hard as you think. So welcome, Meghan. I want to start out by just talking a little bit about your own story. Tell us how you became introduced to Center for Lyme Action and what your own journey was leading up to that.
Sure. So a few years ago, I was in the throes of my own health journey, and I returned home to my parents' house in October of 2019 for what was supposed to be a very short medical leave. I was having a torn meniscus repaired, and I was supposed to be returning back to work in 2 to 3 weeks. And unfortunately, that did not happen. I became bedridden, and later that year in December, I ended up having bilateral hip replacement surgery at the prime age of 26. And the morning after, I finally had gotten an email with test results that allowed me to understand what had been wreaking havoc on my body for all the years leading up to this. And I had confirmation that I had multiple tick-borne illnesses. And this was such a relief, but this was also really frustrating because for a few years I had been going down the wrong path. I had been misdiagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and because of that, I was following the standard protocol of immunosuppressive drugs. So I was on steroids and chemo drugs for about 2.5 years, and it just accelerated the progress of my disease. And in my instance, it was really impacting my joints. And so basically, in a nutshell, I like to say that a tick bite turned me into the bionic woman because from then on, over the next few years, I ended up having a series of surgeries to replace and many joints, 9 total joint replacements. And I have had 8 joints surgically fused, and then a couple of other surgeries to repair some torn tendons, ligaments, etc. So there was a lot of work to clean up the damage that was done from this misdiagnosis. And, obviously I had a lot of time on my hands because that's a lot of recovery. And so I was bedridden for about 3 years, and my parents were my full-time caregivers. And at my worst, my functional level was like comparable to someone who had a spinal cord injury. I had no use of my hands. I couldn't pick up a fork and feed myself. I couldn't use the bathroom independently. And it was really humbling and it was really challenging. But in this moment, I was fortunate in that although my body was completely incapacitated, I could still use my mind and my big mouth. And so that's where I got involved with patient advocacy. And about a year into this journey, friend, Ali Moresco, had suggested that I check out a webinar that was happening for Center for Lyme Action that talked about the Lyme Moonshot, which is this big aim of how are we going to eventually work towards a cure for Lyme disease. And so I attended this event and I heard some really incredible stories from other advocates like Colonel Nicole Malachowski. And I was inspired. And I was at this point where I was grieving, the life that I had intended for myself. I had worked really hard in my career. I had moved across the country. I was living independently and I had built this life that I really loved. And then all of a sudden it was ripped out from underneath me. And I didn't know how I was going to move forward, especially because I was literally stuck on the couch. And so I started getting plugged in with patient advocacy work. And so I started volunteering actually with the Center for Lyme Action. And I joined the fly-in every year where I was advocating with my members of Congress. And when I first started, I was really nervous and it was very overwhelming. And fast forward, it's now been about 5 years that I've been involved with the organization, and I'm really excited that I now work here full time. So it's kind of come full circle, and there's been a lot of other events that have happened in between then. I went back to grad school and I got involved with some really cool federal initiatives. I was really honored to have the opportunity to participate in the tick-borne disease working group on a subcommittee. I got to work on the Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, reviewing applications for really exciting things coming down the pipeline through the DoD programs. And I did a practicum where I had the absolute honor of working with Dr. Fallon and the Lyme and tick-borne disease clinical trials network based out of Columbia. So I had some really cool experiences while I was simultaneously recovering. And now I am really thrilled that I'm back on my feet, which is a huge feat considering all the surgeries. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to walk again, to be honest, or stand. And now I get to run around Capitol Hill and I meet with legislators and I get to talk about Lyme and tick-borne diseases. And it's truly the honor of a lifetime to be able to do that.
Wow, what a story. What an inspiration. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're not only back on your feet, you are running. And,
Running, yes.
to all the important events and all the important things on behalf of all of us out there. So first of all, I just want to thank you for your dedication and your passion for this. And for working for the everyday Lyme patient out there that may not have the resources in their areas. So we know what brought you to Center for Lyme Action, but can you just give us an overview, a real basic kind of umbrella look at what is the Center for Lyme Action by definition?
Yeah. Okay, so as you mentioned, we are a 501(c)(4) organization. So what that means is that we have unrestricted lobbying activities. So 501(c)(3) nonprofits, and we have quite a few in our space. They unfortunately have restrictions on how much lobbying they can do, and that would change tax exemption status. So C4, we can do as much lobbying as we want. And so what we do is we created this event. It's called a fly-in, and we now do it virtually. So you don't have to go anywhere. You can do it from the comfort of your home. All of the trainings, everything is all virtual on Zoom. So we try to make it super accessible because we know that our patients need to be able to participate and share their stories. And it would be really challenging for them to get to DC because there's a lot of different barriers between, it's expensive to travel. It's difficult when you're managing complicated symptoms. And so we want to make this so that there's maximum participation for our community. So we set up these meetings in what we call fly-in, and we set up your meetings with your members of Congress. And so what you get to do is you join a couple of training sessions and we prepare you on what to say and what we're asking for. And what we do is we have these meetings and we set the tone by sharing some personal stories, because it's really important for lawmakers to understand how their constituents are impacted by these issues. So our advocates have the opportunity to maybe share a very short version of their journeys. And so maybe 2 or 3 people will share it on a call. Unfortunately, sometimes there's not an opportunity for everyone to share because we have meetings with upwards of 50 people sometimes, which is a good problem to have. But we encourage advocates to, if they can't share in that conversation, they can follow up with an email. And we give you all the tools to show you how to do that. So we have these meetings, we share our background of how this has impacted us. And then what we do is we ask them for support in the appropriations process. And what the appropriations process is, it's how the federal government allocates its money. And so what we do is we ask for increases in different activities that exist across the federal government that support Lyme and tick-borne diseases. And so some examples of these things are funding the K-Hagen Tick Act and funding CDC prevention programs and research that looks into developing safer and effective repellents. We look to fund things like the LymeX Innovation Challenge, and this gets funding into the pipeline so that we can have some diagnostic innovation. We know that our testing is inadequate. And this is a really great public-private partnership supported by the Cohen Foundation. And what this is doing is creating prize money competitions so that folks can create new diagnostic tools, and hopefully one of them will get through and be, or maybe more than one, be FDA cleared and available on the market so that we have better testing resources widely available. So these are just a few of the examples of things that we're asking for money for, but we put together everything. So we put all your trainings together. We give you essentially a script to read from. So we know that it can be overwhelming. I mean, as I said, I was brand new to this 5 years ago, and I was nervous. I was really nervous going into these calls because I had never done this before. But for anybody who has done it, I hope you also see that after the first time, you're like, okay, I've got the hang of this. You're just having a conversation with someone whose job is to listen to your concerns. And so we have these conversations, and then what we do is we follow up and we send them a form, which is a formal request for the money. And we also need volunteers to help with this form. So if you're not interested in joining meetings, or maybe you can't join because you have some sort of obligation that day, or maybe your health is impacting your ability to participate in those conversations, there's a lot of help that we also need behind the scenes, because this is a huge, huge undertaking. But what I can say is that our advocacy is working. So in the short 5 years that Center for Lyme Action has been around, we have helped to triple federal funding for Lyme and tick-borne diseases, which is
Woo!
amazing and so exciting. And it's kind of unheard of because this is a time where we're seeing cuts across other health programs at the federal government. So we're going against the grain, but we don't want to take our foot off the gas. What we need to do is continue to push forward, because we're at a moment where we can see these monumental changes and get the funding that we need so that we can really transform the landscape for patients who are suffering, and also prevent people from becoming patients. So this is what we do. And something I'm really passionate about is just making sure it's accessible to patients. And so for anybody who maybe has participated in the past, you should be aware that we've updated our trainings a little bit, because one is we want to be really mindful and respectful of your time. We know that your time is valuable, and we want to make sure that we are making the best use of it. So one of the things that we've done is our trainings, we have a fast track training. So if you've done this before and you're like, I just need to know what I'm asking for this year, come to the 1 hour training. And we're going to, zip through it, and you'll be ready to go for your meetings on Wednesday, February 19th.
Oh,
Then if you're new,
right.
we have an extended training. So if you need some extra help, maybe you have done this before and you're just like, this is a lot for me to digest. I'm kind of confused, and that's okay, because a lot of us have been there. And so we're just trying to meet you where you are. So we have an extended training, and this is going to be a 2 hour training session. We're also offering an after hours, so at 8 p.m. Eastern time training session, so that healthcare providers can join us. Because while patient advocacy is so important and it's really central to what we do, something that's really complementary and also very valuable is the healthcare provider perspective, as well as caregiver perspectives, because we want people to see that it's not just patients who are impacted by this, but the healthcare providers. They can see the struggles of their community and their needs not being met. And the caregivers can talk about the different constraints that they have. And so there's a lot of value in bringing everyone to this. And so
That's
we
incredible.
hope that,
So
yeah,
just to reiterate or to clarify, caretakers can also join the fly-in. Okay.
yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And
So
relatives.
we welcome everyone. And so if you want to advocate, you may not personally be impacted by this. I've seen, and this always warms my heart, people on the call who they're like, a family friend was impacted by this, and I've got some free time and I want to lend it to the cause because I've seen how devastating it can be. And so participation from all sorts of community members is certainly welcome and encouraged.
I have to say that I did the fly-in, and I had an amazing time. I was like you. I can get up and talk for hours, I feel like,
Yep.
about certain things, but I had never been in the position of asking for big money. I mean, we're asking for
Yeah.
millions of dollars to a lot into
Mhm.
certain categories, like you just said. So I just want everybody out there to know that I had absolutely no experience in this. I was a little bit nervous. It was exciting, though, at the same time, because I knew that I was going to be on a call with my state representatives. And that was amazing to see the faces and to talk to the people that we actually voted in. And it was a way that I felt like my voice was heard.
Mhm.
And so often in Lyme disease, as you know, we are not heard.
Mhm.
And also, I remember on the call when people started telling their personal testimonials and their personal stories. I think they only each got about 2 minutes, but in those 2 minutes, it moved me to tears because not only hearing stories similar to mine, but also reminding me of the devastation that I went through and validating it. And I'm very healthy now, thank God. But listening to those voices of people in it pleading their representatives to just pay attention and to give us some much needed resources just brought it all back for me. And it was just a very, very, very powerful 2 days for
Yeah.
myself, just even in my
Yeah.
own journey and just sort of my own realizations along the way. So
Yeah.
I would strongly suggest that people get involved in the fly-in. It's not hard to do at all. It's very easy. And a lot of times people they just want you to sit in on it
Mhm.
and be present so that when the Zoom meeting starts, there could be 50, like you said, or 100 people that are staring right into the faces of our legislators. And when that happens, they feel a sense of
Yes.
responsibility. So a lot
Mhm.
of times it's about the bodies
Mhm.
online as opposed to everybody talking.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
actually doesn't need to talk. It's just a
I'm
power in numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that we encourage too is that even if you're just joining and you, you know, for whatever reason are not up for speaking, and maybe you don't even want to be on camera, that's okay. Just show up, let us know that. We have something that we call a silent supporter. And if you want to be a silent supporter, we will mark that. So that way, as we're planning meetings, we will make sure that we have somebody who's willing to do the talking for you. And whether you just want to show up and have your name on the call, or if maybe you want somebody on your team who's in the meetings with you to share something brief on your behalf, that's welcome. And it is really powerful. There's so much power in numbers when we show up. And, for example, California is a great example. Your Senate meetings have probably over 50 people in them every single year. But that's huge because that really shows that this is really impacting people across the state. Um, and so we certainly want folks to join, no matter what your capacity for participation is. And this year especially is a big year for getting involved. And so not only do we have the fly-in where we're still working on getting funding for these existing activities, but while I can't speak to specific details, what I can say is that there's also going to be new legislation that's coming down the pipeline that should be transformational for our community. So I'm really excited to be working on those things behind the scenes. And I'm just excited for many incredible people in our community, like yourself, Allie, who are helping to rally around this cause and energize everyone and get ready because we're going to have a big year ahead. But it's a heavy lift. And so I I like to give people the understanding of what our strategy is we're not only are we going from the top down, where I get to go run around DC and meet with folks in the federal government and talk about this and build alliances. And well, what I like to say is I make a lot of friends in DC. And so I go and I share my story, and I get to share stories from about their constituents, people who I've made friends with too in this community. And so we're doing this top down strategy where we're working on ways that we can move this forward at the federal government, but we also need support from the bottom up. And so that's where the grassroots advocacy part comes in. And so right now, it is more critical than ever for our community to be coming together in a unified fashion, and just work together in tandem in a very coordinated effort, because we've got a lot that we're going to achieve together this year. So I'm really
Wow.
excited to be
That's
able to support.
big. That is big, and I can't wait to hear all about it. That's exciting to see. I mean, it must be such a journey coming from a patient to now you're the government relations manager of Center for Lyme Action. And when I think about that journey, I think about how inspirational you are to all of us right now. And 5 years ago, you were just dipping your toes in the water of advocacy, and it's just an incredible journey. I wanted to talk a bit about how becoming an advocate
Mhm.
can actually help you in your healing process.
Yes.
And just in terms of mental health, I think
Yeah.
alone, it was an important part of the puzzle for me. But let's
Mhm.
talk about how it helped you and
Yeah.
and how you see it helping many other advocates out there.
Yeah. For me too, my mental health was in a really bad place for a very long time, because I was in just such a point of desperation and despair. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. There was just so much that was uncertain.
Mhm.
But when I started getting involved with advocacy, um, for me, it took a lot of courage to do that, because there were all these changes going on with my body and with my health, and there was so much uncertainty, and it was really hard to, I realized, like, as I was starting to be open about what I was going through, which also I will say this was, kind of timing wise, I got sick, or I became bedridden really like right before the pandemic hit. And so I was really isolated already. I got a head start on social distancing. And so
Mhm.
I had been home for a couple of months already. And um, so my condition was, in a way, I felt like I was hiding, or it was hidden. It wasn't so visible. I wasn't going to work. I was stuck in my parents' house, and I really couldn't do anything. And so, as this was all going on, and I was devastated as it progressed, because obviously I didn't expect that I was going to be having a series of major surgery every 3 months for 3+ years. And it seemed like there was no end in sight. Um, and I got to a point where I realized that I could either let it defeat me and define me, um, and get the best of me, and I could count myself out for my own life, or um, I could decide that if this is as good as it's going to get, how am I going to make the most of it? And so that's when I started really pursuing my education. So I went back for my master's in public health, and that was a huge help for me in my mental health. And it was helping give me the tools, because I was like, I feel like there's an opportunity for me to be a change agent here. And as I was advocating every year with Center for Lyme Action and involved with a couple of other things, um, it was really starting to help me feel more comfortable talking about it and processing it. I was able to build a community and connect with so many other patients who had also had their lives, just turned upside down because of this. And so it healed me in so many ways because it provided me a reason to keep fighting. And it gave me a community and it gave me a support system. And of all the things that were taken from me that I felt like I was robbed of from my illness, being involved with advocacy allowed me to feel like I was reclaiming a little bit of what had been taken. And I talk to patients a lot who also have had similar experiences. And so I really encourage folks to at least dip your toes in and see if it's something that feels right for you. And don't feel like you're obligated to. I think that that's really important is if that's not what feels right for you to put yourself out there, that's okay. But there are lots of other ways too that if you want to get involved, but maybe don't want to be so transparent and candid about, you're being vulnerable about the probably the worst thing that you've ever experienced. And um, that's for you to decide when and how you want to share it. But there's lots of ways that you can get involved and help make a difference for this. Um, even if that's not something that you're comfortable with. And so I really encourage patients to consider it. And I know for me and for you, it's been a tremendous help in healing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about retraining your brain to
Mhm.
go from, and I'm not saying you're going to be jumping out of bed the next day, but from going from victim, you are a victim. Let me just say that right off the bat.
Yes.
Everybody out there is a victim of this bacteria and this terrible situation. However, just getting unstuck from that label
Mhm.
and putting yourself into action and taking control of your own destiny of if you can fight from bed. You can use your voice and say, here's my story. You can get on the fly in and just say, this is the reality. I'm in bed right now.
Yeah,
I used to be a
that's so
marathon runner
powerful.
or whatever it was. I mean,
Yeah.
so many people in our community were so active beforehand. So it's about really giving yourself that voice and saying
Yeah.
it out loud and proclaiming and I don't want to say fighting, but for really articulating to our
Mhm.
legislators who some have experience with Lyme disease, but most of them do not.
Yeah.
And
It's becoming more common though that I feel like the conversation is there's always some sort of connection. So
yeah,
it's
especially
it's interesting.
nowadays. I mean, with
Mhm.
every year, you're going to see more and more and more of that,
Yes,
where people
exactly.
have family members that have been affected and they've seen it firsthand. So
Yeah.
I think the road is going to go just it's going to open up for all of you
Yeah.
advocates for Lyme disease awareness and for funding. So,
Mhm.
as you said, just using your voice to make a change is incredible. I want to ask you how people would sign up or learn
Yeah.
more about the fly-in, which is going to be
Yes.
for everybody out there. It's going to be February 18th and 19th of 25, and it's usually held around the same time each year, isn't
Yes.
it, Megan? Okay,
Yes, it
so
is. So
tell
we
us
usually
how we
host it in
can learn
February.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, so we host in February, and I'll run through. I'll share kind of the events that we have going, but just know that you can find all of the details on centerforlymeaction.org/events. There's an events tab on our homepage, so you can find it that way too. So one thing that we're doing, we did this last year for the first time, and it's backed by popular demand. We are working with Generation Lyme, one of our community partners, and we've developed a storytelling workshop. And so we got great feedback on this. Many patients said this was like the most helpful Lyme thing that they've ever been to. So we're really glad that it's so useful. But this is going to be a way to help patients refine their stories and condense them because unfortunately we don't have a lot of time. But thematic storytelling is really important. So if you can share your story in a way that's really concise and say, like many other patients, I experienced financial devastation. I had to stop working. It impacted my education. It impacted my family relationships and my personal life. And show these overarching themes that can be really helpful for lawmakers to understand all of the impacts that this has on society. So we're hosting that workshop on Monday, February 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then we are hosting our Fly-In 101 training, which is what we have for new advocates and for those who would like additional training. And that's the 2-hour extended training. That's on February 12th from 3 to 5 p.m. Then we have our fast track training, which is the 1-hour training for experienced advocates on February 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern, and a provider training. So this is for healthcare providers who we don't want them to take away from time in the clinic. They can join at 8 p.m. on February 13th. Our opening session is on the 18th. This is from 3 to 5 p.m. And this is kind of where we'll go over the progress that we've made, and we'll hear some remarks from members of Congress, and we'll recognize a few special members of Congress who are our champions. So we recognize a handful of those who are really working hard for us on the Hill, and we will recognize our Lyme and tick-borne disease champion awards. And then our meetings are on Wednesday, the 19th. And we ask everyone to anticipate that, block off the day. So make yourself available, because we get the schedules. Sometimes it's about a week before. And unfortunately, it's subject to change. So if something comes up on the Hill and they have to do a last minute change, it may fluctuate a little bit. But during that day, you can anticipate to have at least 3 15 to 30-minute meetings. So you're going to meet with your 2 senators and with at least your member of the House. But if you live in a district where there's few people, we may cluster you. So you may end up meeting with the neighboring district and vice versa. So that way you have a buddy to go in with. And again, everything's virtual. It's all on Zoom. There's no travel required. There is no, fee or anything. We just want to welcome everyone to participate. Again, we also need help behind the scenes. So if you're not able to do the meetings and you'd like to help behind the scenes, or if you are able to do the meetings and you want to help behind the scenes, we love that too. But I have a great team that's leading our appropriations forms. So we have to complete about 1,500 to 2,000 forms following this, which are the formal requests for funding. So we have to send a formal request to every office we meet with. And this is all volunteer led. So if you have proficiency in Microsoft Word and Google Docs and good attention to detail and want to spend some time cranking out forms with us, we'd love to have you. And
that can be done virtually as well.
Virtually, and that's on your own time. So we have it set up. So if you're like, hey, it's Monday night and I have nothing going on and I want to spend an hour or two working on some forms, you can log on and take a couple and submit them. You can, we ask that if you go through the training, we ask everyone to commit to doing at least 3 sets of forms. So that's about 15 forms. Yeah, we appreciate anybody who's willing to help with that. So
And again, I'll say, even if you're sitting down and doing 15 forms in a night, how empowering that is to be putting your pen to the paper, to be submitting these things, to be active, to be telling yourself that you're taking charge of your own destiny, that you're helping other people, that you are raising money. I mean, it's an incredible feeling. That feeling of being helpful as opposed to hopeless is I think what it's all about.
Yeah, indeed. It really is. So I'm glad that I know for me personally, I'm glad that I found this as an outlet in my own healing journey. And I say it all the time to people. I have a couple of different hats that I wear, and I am a patient first, and that's how I came to this space. And I am now a public health professional, and I'm a lobbyist. And so with all these different perspectives that I have, I can say with confidence that we have really good things coming down the pipeline, and there's a lot that we should be excited about. And this is the time for folks to get on board if you're wanting to get involved, and we really would love to have you. And work together so that we can achieve something really, really wonderful for our community.
I love that. I love that so much. Now, I'm just curious, it's starting February 18th. Is there a deadline that everybody needs to sign up? I know you do some stuff
Yes.
just to prepare them. So, is there a
Yep.
deadline?
Right now, it's looking like we're going to be closing our registration by the end of January. So please register ASAP. We encourage everyone to register um, sooner than later because that really helps us in being able to request the meetings with the offices because their schedules fill up very fast. So we like to try to get as much advance notice as possible.
Incredible. I thank you so much for being part of Lyme Time today. I, I could sit here, I think, all day and talk to you and ask questions and get immersed in like you said, the behind the scenes of fundraising and advocacy. It is not particularly glamorous, at times, and it's just a bunch of tedious and meticulous work. But it's because people like you are out there and are dedicated to all of us. And I just send you so much gratitude, so much appreciation. I can't wait to see what great things you guys have in store for us. And please come to me whenever you want to announce those because we will
Absolutely.
splash them everywhere. And it's just so nice to see your hard work paying off. So
Thank you.
thank you, Megan. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for all you do for our community.
Well, good luck on the fly-in. And if anybody has any questions, I'm sure Megan will be able to answer
Yes.
them over at limecenterforaction.org.
Thank you.
Okay, see you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lyme Time Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe on your favorite platform to be notified of new episodes. Remember, this is not intended to be medical advice. Take your findings to your provider to see if something is right for you. No two bodies heal the same, and your doctor knows you and your labs best. You can find out more about the Tick Chicks at thetickchicks.com, and if you subscribe there, you'll be notified of upcoming events like the in-person Losing Lyme retreat that I host. I also have shopping pages dedicated to helping your at-home symptom relief, as well as a private support group. Join the Tick Chicks tribe on Instagram, YouTube, Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, and X. You are not alone.